All right, folks, let's do a video. I am Cougar, and this is my channel. And here I talk about global heating, meteorology, geopolitics, and some other things. Oh, artificial intelligence occasionally, and how that overlaps with as in our ongoing, onrushing, worsening by the year polycrisis. And so there we are. Today, I want to talk about the coming El Nino, the 2026 El Nino. If you haven't heard much about that yet, you're about to. Not just from me. There's a lot of chatter now in the meteorological circles and also the climate science circles. People are genuinely concerned about what is now approaching. We've had some strong El Ninos. We are... if you're new to this channel, you may not know this, so I guess I'll have to say what I always have to say, which is that we are in the middle of, oh no, we wish it was in the middle. We're in the early days of an onrushing global heating catastrophe. So there you go. What is happening? The Earth is warming. 90% of the heat that is accumulated in the Earth by fossil fuel emissions, enhancing the greenhouse effect, 90% of that heat ends up in the oceans, which is a good thing unless you're a fish or a whale or a krill or pretty much anything else. I mean, the oceans are 3/4 of the planet. And you can't store all that heat in the oceans without having some effects, possibly, maybe, on land. And the way we experience ocean heat is in our weather. Well, I mean, you could also go down and get in the ocean and maybe you'll feel that it's hot, or maybe you'll feel that it's different. Or if you're a fisherman, and you go out with your boat, you're trying to catch fish and they're not there, you may notice ocean heating that way. Or maybe even there's a superabundance of the things that you're looking for and you're experiencing ocean heating that way. And the point is it changes a lot. And we are in a big ocean heating event, because we are in the early days of hothouse Earth. Hothouse Earth, what is hothouse Earth? Why are we having this conversation? Humans are doing nothing to stop the greenhouse effect from being enhanced by carbon dioxide emissions from burning fossil fuels. We're doing nothing. Maybe we'll do something someday. We're doing nothing now. And therefore the Earth continues to heat. Some people used to think that it would take a long time to heat the Earth enough to notice. Well, they got over that, didn't they? Because now it's become catastrophic. And you can accuse, and people do this all the time, scientists of being alarmists or catastrophizing normal seasonal changes. You can come up with all that. But hey, we've got the data, and we're talking about the data. And people who want to be in denial about the data, that's fine. That's your choice. But you can't change the data. So there you go. So today we're going to be data driven. I am a scientist, and here I am. We're going to look at data, and we're going to be looking at the ongoing marine heat wave. We're going to look at the onrushing El Nino event, and I really want to discuss. I'm not really here to just fearmonger. Although that's okay too, because you should be afraid. But we'll start with that. And if you become afraid during this, that's good. That was kind of the intent. But what I really want to talk about in like on the third point is what you should be watching for and what you might want to start thinking about doing, because the time to take evasive action, whatever that ends up being in your situation, is not when you're up to your chest in flood water. Can we agree on that? It's not when the hills behind your house are on fire. Probably you should have seen that one coming. Probably should have gotten ahead of that. And if the flames are rushing down the mountain towards your house, maybe it's a little late. So I would like for you to get ahead of this thing. Yeah, I know that's all scary, right? That's all some scary stuff. Well, maybe it won't happen to you. Maybe you're not even in the way of this thing. But I can promise you, I can absolutely assure you without any qualms at all, that there will be people who find themselves chest deep in floodwaters who weren't ready for that. I can guarantee you without any question, there will be people who will be running out of their house half naked in the middle of the night, as the flames rush down the mountain into their neighborhood, who had no idea that was coming. I guarantee you, absolutely guarantee you, that's going to happen. Lots of places. It will be in the news. It will be in the international news. It will be in the news in your community, because who knows where this is going to happen. It's going to happen in a lot of places, and it's going to happen because of global heating, combined with the now imminent El Nino. All right. Let's look at some interesting stuff, shall we? The first thing I want to look at is the cover of my book. It was 100 Days, an End of Civilization novel written by myself, well, Cat Edwinson, same person. Available at Amazon. Link in the description. People say it's good, and they've enjoyed it. And pick yourself up a copy, ebook, paperback, and hardcover, as you prefer. Now, let me switch things up. Yes. Let's look at a global marine heat wave. So this is a satellite image. Well, it's not a satellite image. It's not a picture, obviously. This is a representation. Let me just make sure it's current. Yes, it is. This is the current conditions of water temperatures in the globe, in the world's oceans. The world is actually round, but since I want to see all the oceans at once, I unroll the world and we get this. This is current, and I want you to... Okay, I'm going to have to contrast this. Okay, the reds and the yellows and the oranges, that's hot. This is anomalous. This is anomalous heat or anomalous cooling. The actual temperatures, which we do have, look like this. And this is kind of what you would expect. The equatorial regions are warmer than the poles. Okay, so if I start clicking around a couple of places, let's go over here in the purple near India. The temperature here, I'll click, well, I'll leave it as Fahrenheit. This is 87 degrees Fahrenheit at the equator. Over here in the Central Pacific, I get 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Over here in the equatorial Atlantic, I get 83 degrees Fahrenheit. And over here off of East Africa, in the Arabian Sea, I get 87 degrees Fahrenheit. So for equatorial regions, the water is hot. Some places hotter than others. And that's really important, actually. We'll be talking about that in a moment. If I go up here to some familiar destinations in the Northern Hemisphere, off the coast of Alaska, it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit, so about freezing. Down here in the Gulf of Mexico off of Texas, it's 75 degrees. Just north of Spain, it is 58 Fahrenheit. Over here in the Mediterranean, in the middle, just south of Italy, it's 64. And over here in the Persian Gulf, which of course is so famous in the news right now, I get 78 degrees Fahrenheit. It would be similar in the south. They are ending their summer, and we are beginning our summer, and things are kind of even Steven between the north and the south. They are starting to cool, we are starting to warm, and we're kind of about matched. Later on, of course, the southern hemisphere will be colder, and the northern hemisphere is in summer, and we will naturally be hotter. So these swings in temperature are completely acceptable. This is the seasons, right? We all know how that works. You go to the beach south of France, as you do, and you put your foot in the water in winter. Maybe it's cold in the Mediterranean Sea, but if you go there in the summer, it's probably much warmer, right? We all know that. That's fine. However, it is possible for the waters, the oceans, to be colder than normal and hotter than normal. Just to cut to the chase, we are now in a global marine heat wave. Now, this heat map on the screen now shows where the hot spots are on the map. It also shows the cold spots, and there are a few, but there's not many. Now, I'm going to bring up the calendar app here, and I'm going to go back to, let's try 2013. This may not work. No, there's no data for 2013. Let's try 2014. I know there's data for 2014. Why is there no data for 2014? It could be the month. The data isn't contiguous for every single month. Okay, so this is 2015, and I'm going to go back. I want early 2015 to see if I can do this. And you see, I'm clicking back. I think it's going back. Yeah, it's going back like 2 weeks at a time. So I'm going backward in time 2 weeks at a time. So you can kind of get the feel for what was happening in 2015, the first months of 2015. There's a lot of blue. That's our quick takeaway. There's a lot of blue. Now they are, in 2015, they are about to go into a strong El Nino event, just like we are going into now. We are at the early stages of what is expected to become a super El Nino event. And that's what I'm streaming today about, is El Nino. So we currently are going into, so this is early days, a strong El Nino. We will see how strong it becomes. You can really only know these things in hindsight when it's over, right? And that's typical weather and climate, right? So it's going to be a strong El Nino. That much is known. Some people are even saying a super El Nino is likely. A super El Nino is likely. And I even saw one guy, he had a chart, and some of the lines on the chart, the projections, right, for the future, went so far off the end of the chart, he had to add something above super El Nino, and he called it uncharted El Nino. I thought that was really cute. I think he just didn't know what to say. There was data going up there, a model. So these are forecasts, right? There were forecast data going so high off the chart, it was way above super El Nino. So he had to add another bar to like label that stuff. He simply called it uncharted. So there's that. We're going in, possibly, I mean, there are some models that are saying we're going into uncharted territory. Now, the uncharted, okay, El Nino is a 1 or 2 year event. So you become uncharted, or you enter the worst of it, halfway through the event, right? And you go into it, you start out slow, and then you go into the worst of it, and then it comes back down, and it goes into the other part of the sequence, which is La Nina, which is the cold phase of the ENSO. And if you've been monitoring any of this discussion, you know all about this. The only debate right now in the science community, in the meteorological community, is this going to be a strong El Nino, a super El Nino, or an uncharted El Nino? That's the level of the discussion. Okay, so again, this map that you're looking at right here, this is early 2015, and in a few months, they found themselves in a big time El Nino. It was the 2015-2016 El Nino. Again, these cover multiple years often, or at least enough to be mentioned into 2 years. So I'm just going to click forward on this. We are getting a strong El Nino, if not a super El Nino, and we might get an uncharted El Nino. So we're going to have to go back and look at 2015-2016 where, yeah, that happened. So now I'm in the first quarter. Let's get to mid-2015. El Nino, I'm going to get out my drawing tool. The El Nino is actually measured in about this region of the ocean, okay? About here. So scientists, they look in this box. It's not the exact box, but it's fairly close. They look in this box and they say, what's the temperature of the water? And if the temperature of the water in this region averages out to be half a degrees Celsius above normal, then that's El Nino territory. And if it goes 1.5 degrees, then it's and they just then they assign different terms to the El Nino that you're getting as it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. Excuse me. So this is the region. Now I'm going to have to get rid of my drawing tool to continue using this map, but I just want you to focus on that. This is where El Nino or La Nina is measured. But you can see there's a lot going on this map. There's definitely a heat wave north of there in the northern hemisphere, but there's also some really cold spots. Again, this is 2015. This is 10 years ago. We're going to get to the current event here, and you're going to see a big difference. And I'm going to be switching back and forth between these two. In fact, I probably should open another tab. I may just open another tab. You'll have to put up with me doing that because I want to be able to switch between the two for comparison purposes. Because, okay, preview of coming attractions. We're in serious trouble, people. 2026, we are in deep. Okay, we are in for a wild ride, and people who work the same side of the street that I'm working right now are losing their minds over this. All right, they are. We have an uncharted El Nino. People are already talking about this is going off the charts. We've been having many events in the climatological space that have been off the charts, and this really started in 2023. There are parts of the climatological data that went off the charts in 2023 and gradually tried to return to normal and then didn't. And now it's 2026 and people are really concerned. Okay. Well, again, this map is 2015. I'm going to lose my drawing tool and I'm going to skip forward a couple of more months. You see that area in the South Pacific is still hot. So we're definitely into El Nino territory. But notice all the blue on this map. The Southern Hemisphere, the North Atlantic, up near Greenland, the Central Pacific. There's a lot of cool spots on here. And this is definitely the old school view of El Nino, that the heat came in the South Pacific. That's why we have a box in the South Pacific that we look at and we measure. All right, you could talk about El Nino quite separately from the rest of the world's oceans because most of the heat in question for the El Nino event would be happening in this central part of the Central Pacific. And it really took off. Now we're in mid to late 2015, and I'm just clicking through this, and you can see the heat coming in. And if you're just listening to this, you have my sympathies. I'm just trying to describe it as best I can. So what's the date? 2015. This is like September. Okay, it's really getting hot in the measured region where the El Nino is being described, the region in the equatorial Pacific. And you can see there's a lot of bright yellow in here now. Okay, now we're up to, this is now October of 2015. And this continued into 2016. This was a super El Nino. This was bad. This was a big deal. So now that I've done all that, and you're kind of used to how this picture looks, I want to go back a little ways, back to 2015 proper. I guess I can't really do it like that. Anyway, we'll just leave this here. And I want you to notice that there really is only one hot spot in this map in 2015, verging into 2016. It's this bright orange, let me get a tool so I can draw. It's this bright orange area right here in the equatorial Pacific. There is a heat wave off of California. That did happen. That was a marine heat wave off of California. But El Nino is not part of that. That's simply a marine heat wave off of California, and that was a thing we had to deal with. The El Nino is measured in this region I've just outlined. Okay, so now I'm going to jump forward to now. Okay, and I want you to notice what happens to this global map. It's hot everywhere. There's almost no blue. There's almost no blue that says, oh, it's a little cooler here than it should be. Everything is hot. And there's a little bit of hot. I'll grab my drawing tool real quick. This is the area, the central part of equatorial Pacific Ocean, where they do the measurements for the El Nino and say if it's a strong El Nino or not. And you'll notice there's some red there. So it's anomalously warm, but it's not by much. But these are just early days. This El Nino, this super El Nino, the thing that will become a super El Nino, or perhaps even uncharted El Nino, these are early days. It's supposed to land in June, July time period. Some people think it's going to come in May. Again, this is climatology and behavior of the oceans, which is what's driving this. So we'll see. We'll have to see. But people are worried that it might come earlier and become stronger, not the other way. There's nobody really saying, oh, this is going to be a nothing burger. Everyone's saying, well, we think we know what's going to happen, but it could be worse. And when you have meteorologists and climatologists saying, well, we know it's going to be bad, but it could be worse. Okay, then you need to take shit seriously, because I'm telling you, these people always sandbag. What is sandbagging? So I'll just be savage about this. Sandbagging is what you do to protect your career. There you go. I said it. You think there's conspiracies that scientists are making this out to be worse than it is, and they're always fear-mongering? No. No, 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 no. Yeah, there's a conspiracy, all right. In the other direction. They're doing the exact opposite of what their accusers are accusing them of. They're not talking this up and fear-mongering and trying to get people, and they're not selling newspapers, but they are trying to protect their careers. Because if you come out with a report that says there's going to be trouble, people are going to shit can you, because nobody wants to hear that. And if you come out and you say, well, it might not be too bad, and then it's a lot worse, you can always say, wow, I didn't know it was going to be so much worse. So your career is protected by downplaying it, and then if it's so much worse, you can always say, well, who knew? I warned you there could be something bad. I didn't know it was going to be this bad, and no one can blame you for downpedaling it, because that is the correct answer. You always play it down. We call this sandbagging. So these people, and I am completely sympathetic when they tell you, well, it's going to be a strong El Nino, but it could be worse. They're sandbagging. And they're already saying it's going to be a strong El Nino. And when they say it could be worse, what they're meaning is we could be in big trouble. They're not going to say that because they risk their careers and their professional status by saying things like that. So they're going to say something that, it's not going to bring attention to themselves, and then they're going to sit back and they're going to watch, and if it's really horrible, then they'll say, well, we did say it was going to be bad, and we did mention in passing it could be worse, but so they're covered. All right, this is sandbagging. Nobody wants to be the nail that sticks up. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. Now I'm here to tell you that. No, I'm not a practicing scientist. I don't have grants. I don't have graduate students. I don't have a teaching schedule. I don't have to write grants to get more money from the government. I'm not in this race, so I don't have to worry about it. But there are people who do. And the people who are in this race, who have mortgages and student loans to pay off and kids to send to school, these people who are trying to protect and build their careers are telling you this is going to be bad. But it could be worse. I'm here to tell you, it could be off the charts. And I've even seen that on a chart. The guy even put it on there. He didn't say anything about the uncharted El Nino, but he put it on there. But he put it on the chart and let you look at the chart. And you can figure it out on your own. We're all adults here. We can all read a chart. And if the chart says there's a part of this that's possibly uncharted, well then, Don't come to me later and say I didn't mention it could be uncharted. We could be off the charts because it was on the chart. It was even on the chart that we'd be off the chart. And I'm here to tell you we could be off the chart because I saw the chart that said we could be off the chart. He didn't talk about it. I'm talking about it. I should have that chart. I should put it up here because it's kind of funny. It's really kind of like, wait, does that say uncharted El Nino? Above Super El Nino, they actually had to add uncharted? Really? We're doing that now? Yes, we are doing that now. And one other thing they don't really talk about is that this possibly, definitely Super El Nino, but could be uncharted El Nino, is happening during a marine heat wave. And that's what you're seeing here on this picture. It's hot everywhere. There's heat everywhere. Some of it's worse than, some places than other places, but there's almost no place on here that's blue. Shall we go back to 2015? Let's go back to 2015. Here's 2015. Okay, there's some hot spots because this was an El Nino year. So there was going to be heat in the oceans that is measurable, that's going to alter weather, which we'll get to in a minute. But there's also a lot of blue because they were not suffering a global marine heat wave. And if I fast forward to now, we are. You see? Data. We're doing science here, folks. We're doing some science. We're doing some, it's savage. All right, I'm being savage here. I'm throwing it in your face. I'm throwing this in your face, and because I want you to understand your situation. Your situation is not good. All right, your situation is not good. How bad could it get? Well, shall we just look at that a little bit? I'm going to look at the 2015-2016 El Nino. So this is in the past. This is history now. History. We can look back at it and say, huh, so that's what happened. With the understanding, I mean, projections, doesn't always work out, but if we're going to do some forecasting, let's start with a known event, the 2015-2016 Super El Nino, and then maybe we can talk about the 2026-2027 Super and or Uncharted El Nino in the context of a global marine heat wave. Okay, so there's a lot of things that are changed this time around than last time around, but let's look at last time around, shall we? Because, some of this is going to ring a bell, probably. Let me make sure over here that everything is displayed correctly. Yes, it is. So I'm going to read this. This is a query to Gemini. The query was, give some examples of how the 2016 strong El Nino affected global weather patterns. So pretty vanilla, right? I think so. It was a strong El Nino. It was. It did affect global weather patterns. Those do exist. So let's look into this. I mean, I'm not being fear-mongering here. Simple query. Give some examples of how the 2016 strong El Nino affected global weather patterns. Does that sound alarmist to you? Shouldn't. It's just a question. Is Gemini alarmist? No. It just answers questions. So let's go into this. Oh, it could be wrong. They always tell you there's always a little asterisk at the bottom of the answer. Gemini could be wrong. Okay, fine. Gemini could be wrong. But this is in the past. I'm not asking it to tell me how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, right? We're just doing record keeping here. So now, with all that qualification, let me read some of this to you, and you can maybe learn something. And if this affected you back then, maybe you'll have some memories of this. Oh, if you do, do us a favor. If you remember what happened to you or your community during the 2015-2016 Super El Nino, and some of what I'm about to read may spark some memories for you, put them in the comments, because this is a broad-based query. I mean, global weather patterns. It would be nice to know what some of the viewers of this stream video now or in the future when you watch it again, what experiences you had, because it would be nice to have some granularity here. If it flooded in your community, if it was really hot, if the crops failed or rivers dried up or lakes dried up, it would be nice to know that, because people may find that information useful, and I really do encourage you to add it to the video. And if you are in the live comments, definitely do. I'm just clicking around here trying to get my orientation. If you are in the live comments, then definitely stick that in there. Maybe I'll come back later and we'll read the live comments. Okay, so back to the topic. The 2015-2016 El Nino, often referred to as a Super El Nino, was one of the strongest on record. It significantly disrupted global weather by shifting atmospheric circulation, leading to record-breaking heat and extreme precipitation anomalies across several continents. Precipitation can take the form of rain or snow. Temperature and climate records. It was the hottest year on record. Aided by the event's release of ocean heat, the 2016 became the hottest global surface temperature year on record at the time. Global surface. So although El Nino is an ocean event, and of course the ocean surface becomes hot, the emission of that heat into the air can then move heat around the planet. And so other surfaces become record hot. We are in a global heating event, and we have been for probably 100 years, most notably in the last 30 or 40. And so therefore, anything that disturbs the heat balance of the Earth is noticeable in surface temperatures. I'll read this again. Aided by the event's release of ocean heat, 2016 became the hottest global surface temperature year on record at the time. It contributed to record high sea surface temperatures and months of unprecedented ocean heat content. No surprise. El Nino is a ocean surface heat anomaly. Regional weather impacts. So this is where the rubber meets the road, okay? Africa. Severe drought in Ethiopia and southern Africa led to massive crop failures and food shortages. Again, this is 2015, 2016. Conversely, East African countries like Kenya and Tanzania experienced intense short rains, causing major floods and landslides. So again, two things can be true. 2016 was the hottest year on record up to that time, but it also had record rains associated with that. There's no global statement about how this global thing works itself out. Yeah, sure, the hottest year on record, but some places may have a lot of heat, or really exceeding even the human levels of tolerance, and other areas might have record rainfall and resulting flooding. And all these things can be true because we're talking about a global weather system. In North America, there's 3 bullet points. The southern U.S. and Florida saw much higher than average winter rainfall. El Nino has summertime impacts and wintertime impacts, and they are dependent on, of course, the season. So that's what they're saying here, that the winter rainfall patterns were remarkable during the El Nino. So I'll read this again. The southern U.S. and Florida saw much higher than average winter rainfall. The northern U.S. and Canada experienced unusually warm winter conditions. So two things can be true at the same time. Record coastal erosion occurred along California beaches even without extraordinary total rainfall. Coastal erosion means high waves. So you have to, where the high waves come from. You'll have to read between the lines for that. In South America, right? Southern Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay received excessive rainfall and flooding. I remember, was it the Pantanal became like a lake? While northern South America, we're getting to double negatives here. Northern South America, okay, and the Amazon basin suffered through intense drought. And this was the beginning of the discussion of, is the Amazon rainforest in collapse? This was the first time when this became a topic, the collapse of the Amazon rainforest. And even in 2016 being the hottest year on record up to them, of course, sparked that discussion. But since then, my understanding is that, yes, the Amazon basin is in now what we call terminal decline. It didn't help that 2016 was a very dry, intense drought in the Amazon rainforest. It didn't help. But we're also experiencing global heating. So even though there's an intense El Nino, you can't really expect it to bounce back because there is now global heating. And that doesn't go away. There you go. Asia and Oceania. Oceania is like Indonesia. I think it's also called the maritime continent. Maritime meaning the ocean continent, which is weird. But that's a bunch of islands, including to some extent Australia. So there's the maritime continent. That's a bunch of nations and tiny islands and larger islands that are surrounded by water. Asia and Oceania. Indonesia and northern Australia faced severe dryness, which contributed to vast forest fires in Indonesia. Indonesia just basically burned up. They burned up. I remember that. That was terrible. It was a real environmental catastrophe. Okay, moving on. Biological, once again, context. This is a discussion of climatological and biological and health effects associated with the 2015-2016 Super El Nino. We're just reviewing history because we're going into another Super El Nino later this year. Biological and health secondary effects. Disease outbreaks. The shift in moisture patterns led to clusters of disease activity, including cholera in Tanzania, and plague in Colorado and New Mexico, both associated with above normal rainfall. I remember the plague thing happening in southwest U.S. I think the story was that there are voles, little rodents, that would live in near communities and are generally kept in check by the cat population and other things. But When the floods came, they were driven out of their burrows and into people's homes. And when people came in contact with the rodents who carry plague, and also came in contact with the fleas from the rodents, then they got plague. Now, plague is easily treatable with antibiotics, so it's not a big deal. But of course, it is a big deal because plague is also called the Black Death. It killed half of Europe back in the day, 1300s. Of course, they didn't have antibiotics at the time or modern medicine or anything else. But of course, it's still, we still remember, we talk about the plague. At least the healthcare officials still talk about the plague. So when the Southwest got plague, people stood up and took notice. Wait, plague? You mean that plague? The same plague? Yes, the same plague. They treated it and it went away. But it's interesting to note that it was the rainfall event that stirred up the rodent population and brought them back in contact with humans. That's the thing, folks. Okay, so that's discussion of the 2015-2016 El Nino. That was a super El Nino, as they measure such things. And we are going into a super El Nino here in 2026 and 2027. We can expect similar outcomes because of that, except that this time around, we have a marine heat wave going on. So what is that going to do? I asked the AI what might happen because of a marine heat wave. Now, we're in uncharted territory here. We had a super El Nino back in 2015, 2016, but we did not have a marine heat wave going on. Now, 10 years further on, we have a marine heat wave, and El Nino is coming back to do its thing. Yes, of course, the marine heat wave is going to exacerbate things. It's going to add to the trouble. So let's take a look at this. Here's the question I asked. How might the ongoing global marine heat wave interact with the approaching super El Nino event? Pretty straightforward, right? So let's read through this. The interaction between the ongoing global marine heat wave and the anticipated super El Nino event in 2026, basically halfway through the year, is supposed to show up, is projected to act as a risk multiplier, creating unprecedented ocean temperatures that could turn a normal strong El Nino, okay, a usual strong El Nino, which is already, you're already in trouble. You're already in normal trouble. There could be worse than normal trouble, into a historic high-impact climate event. This is the basis of the concern. When you listen to your meteorologist and you listen to your climatologist and you listen to these people in this space that I am occupying right now, talking to you, when you talk to these people in this space, they are anxious. We know that El Nino can cause big trouble. We just went through the short list of some of the climatological impacts from the last time we had a strong El Nino. But now this time, it's 10 years further on. Global heating is worse. The marine heat wave is a thing. We've already have 10 years of impacts, including what happened in 2023 and 2025. So we're going to pile this on top of all that, and then we're going to get whatever we get. And they're worried. Because why wouldn't you be? You kind of have to be thick-headed not to be worried at this point. This combined phenomenon, the marine heat wave, which is a thing, combined with the coming El Nino, which is also a thing. This combined phenomenon is expected to drive 2026 or 2027 to become the warmest year on record while creating severe disruptions in global marine ecosystems. So 2026 and 2027, it could be both, right? We just exited the warmest winter on record. So that's already going on. And now we're going to have a super duper uncharted El Nino on top of that. There's no reason not to expect 2026 not to be. I got to be careful here. We have no business expecting that 2026 could be a normal year. It probably will be among the hottest years on record. And the record goes back a long ways. This could be the hottest year ever experienced by human beings. Humans. Not animals, humans. While creating severe disruptions in global marine ecosystems. Let's go to key interactions and impacts. Amplified global heating and climate records. The ongoing marine heat wave provides a warmer, quote, base state for the Pacific Ocean. When the El Nino begins releasing vast amounts of heat from the ocean into the atmosphere, this added premature heat from the heat wave, so the heat wave is already here, the El Nino is coming. When the El Nino begins releasing vast amounts of heat from the ocean into the atmosphere, this added premature heat from the heat wave will amplify the warming, likely pushing 2026 or 2027, or both, into becoming the hottest years ever recorded. Let's just stop there for a moment, shall we? The hottest years ever recorded. The hottest years ever recorded. Now, you can think to yourself, yeah, but we've had hot years before. You think you have. You're about to have the hottest year ever recorded. And you need to sit back and think about that. If you think you've had hot years before, and that was rough, or that was costly, or someone you know died, or you ended up in the hospital with, dehydration or heat stroke or heat stress or whatever, you couldn't go to work, whatever. The power failed, it got hot, it was miserable. If you think that was bad, they're already saying 2026 and or 2027 could become the hottest years ever recorded. That's it, folks. So whatever you think you know about the weather and the seasons and the coming and going and the heat and the cold and the dry and the wind and the snow and everything else, whatever you think you know about that, you don't know anything about this, because this is going to be the hottest years ever recorded. 2 of them back to back, because this El Nino is going to span 2 years at least. It comes in the middle of 2026 and it will leave sometime during 2027. And so we get to have a record hot fall and a record hot winter. And then we see what happens. Then we see what happens. We're going to get that at least. And then we see what happens. Expansion of marine heat waves. The developing El Nino is forecast to expand existing heat waves in the Pacific, with projections that the area covered by marine heat waves could grow from 27% currently to over 40% by late 2026. Let me go back to the marine heat wave. This is the picture. The Pacific, all right, let me get a drawing tool, because we don't always know how to read maps. The Pacific Ocean is this big blob here. This is the Pacific Ocean. That's the focus of that discussion. There's a lot of heat in the Pacific Ocean. And by the time El Nino gets done with it, there's going to be even more. About double by percentage. All right? Back to our how might. So instead of 27% being considered in a heat wave, it'll be 40%. Not quite double, but fairly close. Supercharged weather events. The combination of an intensely warm Pacific and an El Nino is likely to lead to more intense storms, extreme humidity, and severe rainfall in places like the southern U.S. and Southern California, shifting from a dry to a very, very wet winter in 2026 and 2027, because that's what happened in 2016. They had a really wet winter. And remember, there was coastal erosion. And Death Valley became a lake. Death Valley, the hottest place on Earth, became a lake. Temporarily, right? Then it wasn't a lake anymore. But it was interesting. The Death Valley became a lake. Lake Manning or Manfield or something like that. There you go. Now, that's just a projection. We don't know, because there's also a marine heat wave going on top of El Nino. So the marine heat wave probably contributed to the lower 48 states having the warmest winter on record. So that's a start to the year. March was the hottest March ever recorded in the United States. We had 63% of the country was in a heat wave during the winter. What can I say? That's data. That's what happened. There was so much heat in March that it melted all the snow. And now there's no snow base. This is supposed to give us water during the dry season, which has pretty much officially started. Increased threat of tropical cyclones. Cyclones of all kinds, including hurricanes, are driven by heat in the water. That's where they start their life. And then they come ashore and they do terrible things. But they start their life in the where there's hot water in the oceans. Increased threat of tropical cyclones. Warmer coastal waters, particularly in the eastern Pacific and off the coast of California, could make this region more vulnerable to tropical storms, similar to the impacts of Tropical Storm Hilary in 2023. 2023 was a really special year. That's when the wheels basically started to come off. Yes, here's a tab. I asked a question because I remembered this to some extent. So I went ahead and asked another question. All right, let's talk about Tropical Storm Hilary. What were some of the impacts on Southern California associated with Tropical Storm Hilary? This was a pretty big deal. This was kind of California getting a cyclone. You know, we hear hurricanes coming ashore in the U.S. South and Southeast, and sometimes on the east coast of the U.S., like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, but more often Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. So they get hurricanes all the time. We don't get that in California. We're not in the path of cyclones here in California, and yet we got one. Now, it was a remnant of a cyclone that didn't make its way across the Pacific. If it had made its way across the Pacific, it might have hit Hawaii, the Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, but it didn't. It looped back right away, and it came back up into Southern California. It wasn't a cyclone anymore. It was a tropical remnant, but boy, it didn't matter. Even as a remnant low, it stirred things up. Tropical Storm Hilary, which struck Southern California in August 2023, was the first tropical storm to hit the region in 84 years. There you go. It caused an estimated $90 million in damage across the United States, primarily through record-breaking rainfall, flash flooding, and mudslides. It didn't just stop in California. And this happens all the time with these big cyclones. They come ashore with a huge amount of energy, and then it takes a long time to dissipate the energy. And then the clouds go inland even further, and they drop torrential amounts of rain. It's always very exciting when a tropical storm or a remnant low comes ashore. So let's look into Hilary. Again, this was 2023. Preview of coming attractions. Possibly, that's all we're doing here. Record rainfall. Hilary became the wettest tropical cyclone in California's history. Well, again, at least since 84 years ago. Some desert areas received more than half their annual rainfall in a single day, with Death Valley setting a new single-day record of 2.2 inches, surpassing its entire annual average. Death Valley, appropriately named, doesn't get much rainfall, but they got 2.2 inches, surpassing its entire annual average. So whatever rainfall they do get, again, this surpassed it in one day. That's the effect of a remnant low. It just rains on you. It just rains so hard you can't believe it. Infrastructure damage. Flash floods and debris flows washed away or damaged roads in 13 California counties. It was a dumpster fire, okay? Riverside County sustained $126 million in damage. This is like a one-day event. One day. $126 million in damage. It's costliest natural disaster ever, with major impacts in the Coachella Valley and flooding on Highway I-10. Nino County. Damage to this county alone was estimated at $500 million, largely due to the complete closure of Death Valley National Park for 2 months, its longest ever. After all 1,300 miles of park roads were damaged. There are people who live in Death Valley or on the perimeter or have to go through, and there was so much road damage due to all the rain that they couldn't function. So 1,300 miles of roads were basically wiped out. Power and service. The storm left approximately 57,000 customers without power at its peak in the Coachella Valley. 911 emergency services. Here in the U.S., we dial 911 to get emergency services. I know elsewhere in the world it's different. 911 emergency services were down for several days, forcing residents to use alternate contact methods. So they couldn't dial 911 for help. And, of course, a lot of people wanted help. They had to figure out some other way to do that. Community and public safety. Casualties. One death was reported in San Bernardino County where a woman was swept away by floodwaters in Angeles Oaks. That doesn't mean that was the only car washed away. There was probably a lot of other vehicles lost in the flooding. People in this region, even though they knew there was a tropical storm coming ashore with a remnant low and it's going to rain like a son of a gun, they don't know these things. And because they're basically chimps and the new thing is just unknown and don't care, then they just went about their business. And they ended up being washed into gullies and washed into lakes, and this woman lost her life because people just don't. People can't adapt. People cannot adapt. And that's why I'm here today, because people cannot adapt. People are dumb. They hear, oh, there's a cyclone coming ashore. What is that? What's a cyclone? I don't even know what that is. I don't have any place in my mental map of hazards that I might face in my life where I can place this event, because I don't know what that is. So they get in their car and they go driving down the road and they run into a flood, and then they run into a ditch, and then the car is upside down and they're drowning in their own car, and they're like, what's happening to me? What is this? I have no place in my mental map of risks and hazards where I can place this. Well, get a clue, people. Or don't. I mean, seriously, what do I care? Rescues. Dramatic rescues occurred in Cathedral City, where 14 residents of a nursing home were evacuated using bulldozers to navigate 5-foot deep mud and water. So, someone's operating a nursing home. They hear there's going to be torrential rains. It's going to be terrible. You need to evacuate. What do? Nothing. They do nothing. Because they don't get it. They're chimps. They have no place in their brain to put this as a hazard or a risk. And so they just left these people in the old folks' home. And then they had to rescue them with helicopters and bulldozers, and because there was a mudslide and there was rain and there was floods and water up to the chest and all these kinds of things. It was all in the forecast. They didn't believe it. And they didn't have any place in their brain, in their chimp brain, for a mental map for the risks associated with Tropical Storm Hilary. They had no idea. It's not even, I don't have an idea, because the weather reports were telling them. And they probably even got the emergency alerts to evacuate. But because they don't believe any of it and none of it makes sense, they did nothing. That's how it is. That's why I'm here. Do something. Save yourself. Or don't. I mean, really, seriously. Do or don't. I mean, what can I say? Closures. Widespread closures affected the region, including major districts like Los Angeles Unified and San Diego Unified canceled classes. Theme parks such as Disneyland, SeaWorld San Diego, and Six Flags Magic Mountain closed early or entirely on the day of impact, and some of these places had to stay closed for a few days or a week just to fix themselves. Over 1,000 flights were canceled at regional airports like LAX, San Diego, and Palm Springs. So canceling flights is kind of a big deal. You know, planes, they're big. They fly in rain all the time. Well, they had to cancel some flights. And were they ready for that? No. And then there's something about a hurricane. That sounds goofy, so we won't go there. What else can we talk about here? So again, we've talked about 2015, 2016 as a preview of coming attractions. California had a massive El Nino event associated with hurricane. Well, not hurricane. It was a tropical remnant of basically a hurricane or cyclone that came ashore in 2023. Okay, now, closer to home now. Both because I live in California, but also 2023 wasn't that long ago. So we're well into global heating at this point. Ocean heat waves were still a thing back then, becoming a thing back then. 2023, the middle of 2023 was when the wheels came off. I remember that quite distinctly. And we've been in uncharted territory since then, until today. And now we're about to enter even more uncharted territory with an uncharted El Nino. So, something to look forward to, I guess. What else do I have here? Okay, this is an interesting query because now we need to start talking. About why do you care? All right, so I did a query. This is very specific. Let's just roll with it. How does a strong El Nino affect weather in the U.S., the UK, Europe, and India? Places I care about. Okay. That's me being a chauvinist. You can run this same query for your own region if you want to. How does a strong El Nino affect weather in the fill in the blank, right? It's hard to do this kind of query because the effects are highly esoteric and regional. So, but putting in the UK and Europe, you might think, oh, that's unnecessary. Isn't the UK part of Europe? Yeah, but UK is an island, and Europe is a continent. So the impacts could be different. Let's go through this list, shall we? US, UK, Europe, and India. Oh, I had to do India. I could have done Indonesia just as easily, because they're close enough that the impacts are kind of the same. But the problems for South Asia in a swath from India all the way to the Philippines is fairly catastrophic during a strong El Nino. Really, they have big problems. Let's read. A strong El Nino, often referred to as a super El Nino. Actually, strong El Nino and super El Nino are different levels on the same scale. I mean, technically. You can say, oh, we just had a strong El Nino. Well, the meteorologist will tell you, no, actually it was a super El Nino, or it was a strong El Nino, or it was just a regular El Nino. Those are technical terms for an El Nino of a certain temperature. A strong El Nino, often referred to as a super El Nino. Those are different things. When sea surface temperatures rise at least 2 degrees C above normal, so 2 degrees Celsius above normal, and that is correct. El Nino territory, you hit that when it's 0.5, half a degree C above normal, and then it just gets worse from there. A super El Nino shifts Pacific jet stream southward, fundamentally altering global weather patterns. While no two events are identical, the current 2026-2027 forecasts highlight several likely regional impacts. So now we're forecasting. Okay, we've already talked about 2015 or 2016 and a little bit about 2023 as it affected me here in California. Now we're going to start forecasting. And again, my targets here for forecasting are the US, the UK, Europe, and India. Kind of covering a lot of the bases here. United States. Impacts are most pronounced during the cool months. So that's October to May, the fall, winterish months. And this is not uncommon. El Nino events are sometimes worse in the summer for a region or sometimes worse in the winter for a region. And you just have to know what your region is, and if you're curious, you should do the same query. Impacts are most pronounced in the U.S. during the cool months, October to May. Southern U.S., California to the Gulf Coast, so that's sort of my region. More like the Southwest. It's called Southern U.S., but it's more like the Southwest. Experience wetter than average conditions and cooler temperatures. This can bring drought relief, but increases the risk of flooding, landslides, and severe storms. That's true. California, during an El Nino, you have to worry about torrential rains and flooding, which can be good because we need the water for all the things we do with water. Northern U.S. and Canada typically see warmer and drier winter weather, particularly in the northwest and northern plains. So they get warmer and drier winter. And I can also say something about El Nino, which is the opposite swing of the ENSO pendulum. During an El Nino, Southern California and the Southwest tend to get dry in the winter. And the Northwest, places like Washington State and Montana, they tend to get wetter. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of keep track of this, is because it does help with forecasting. Since we're going into a strong El Nino, we're expecting Southern California and the Southwest to get more rain than normal, and we're expecting the north of the U.S. and into Canada to get less precipitation and be drier and warmer. And regarding the Atlantic hurricane season, we do get hurricanes in the lower 48 U.S. states. They generally come from the Atlantic, although more recently they've been coming from the Gulf of Mexico, which is an interesting trend. As regards the Atlantic hurricane season, El Nino increases vertical wind shear, which typically suppresses hurricane development, potentially leading to a quieter season. So that's on the plus side, right? Doesn't mean you won't have storms, but they may not be powerful hurricanes, and let's just take that as a win for the U.S. Doesn't mean they won't have Gulf of Mexico hurricanes. Oh yeah, that's a thing, folks. We'll see what happens with the Gulf of Mexico hurricane season. They're not mentioning that here. Gulf of Mexico hurricanes are actually a fairly recent phenomenon, but I've noticed that as a pattern. We're getting Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico hurricanes that spin up in like 2 days from nothing. Jamaica got pounded by Melissa. Came out of nowhere. Right next door. Right just south of Jamaica. Melissa spun up out of nothing, came ashore in Jamaica, beat them to pieces, and then went on to beat up Cuba, and then went ashore somewhere in the U.S., and it came out of nowhere. Did not cross the Atlantic. Was not part of the Atlantic hurricane season. Came out of nowhere. In the backyard of Jamaica. United Kingdom. The influence is indirect and often lags behind the actual peak of the event. And I've heard that before. Like even the northern part of the UK has a different experience than the southern part. And so maybe you could say El Nino doesn't have a big effect on the UK. I'm not sure I would say that, but you could start with that. The influence is indirect and often lags. Winter. El Nino years I'll start over. El Nino years are a known factor that increases the risk of colder winters in the UK, especially in the later months, like January to March. However, early winter can sometimes be milder and wetter, so your mileage may vary. Summer. Impacts are less consistent, but there is a slight shift towards warmer and drier conditions, particularly in southern and central regions. So once again, the El Nino has one type of effect in winter, and the same El Nino has a slightly different effect in summer. This is not unusual. It's affecting weather patterns. Where do your storms come from? And all of a sudden they start coming from a different direction, or they come less frequently, and so that affects your weather. That's what El Nino does. In Europe, similar to the UK, the effects are less direct but still notable. In winter, southern Europe often experiences wetter conditions. In central and northern Europe, strong El Ninos can lead to reduced snowfall across much of the continent. Important things to know. Summer, increased risk of extreme heat waves and droughts, though some western regions might see more rainfall from Atlantic low-pressure systems. And then India. But again, India is really a stand-in for South Asia. Monsoon disruption. A strong El Nino is historically associated with a weaker monsoon season, leading to reduced rainfall and potential drought. Yes, India may be in for some trouble this summer. Agriculture disruptions. Actually, I don't know when the monsoon season is in India. You guys know. Agriculture. Disruptions to the monsoon have significant negative implications for Indian agriculture, particularly for staples like rice and wheat. Be warned. Heat. El Nino years often contribute to more frequent and intense heat waves across the country. Be warned. We're already having marine heat waves. Now we're going to get a super, if not uncharted, El Nino. Be warned. And I think that's about it for things I have queried. Let me go back to this. So that's kind of the size of things, folks. Once again, why are we having this conversation? Because people in the space where I work are having a fit over what's happening in the climate and the meteorological spaces. We're having a marine heat wave. This is a big deal. The oceans have never been hotter in the history of whatever, humanity, okay? And now we're going to have a super El Nino. And people are saying, according to some forecast models, it could be an uncharted El Nino. So be warned. You are warned. I'm here to warn you. Well, you're here to make me afraid. No, I'm here to warn you. If it's fearful, be afraid. I mean, that's how this works, folks. That's how it works. That's how all this stuff works. And for even broader context, we are going into hothouse Earth. The greenhouse effect is ramping up. This is a centuries-long, a century. This is a 100-year event in which the Earth will continue to heat, and who knows how far it's going to go. Some estimates say we're going to at least 4.5 degrees centigrade above a pre-industrial baseline temperature, average temperature. We're going 4.5 degrees above that, and we might go even above that. Probably will. Given how the Earth's dynamic system behaves, once you reach a certain threshold, well, then you're set up to go even further. There's a certain journey, and then when you reach that journey, that puts you on another journey. So that's something to be aware of. The Paris Climate Accord, signed in 2015, just with the onset of a super El Nino, it's good to recall, thought that it was prudent to not exceed 1.5 degrees C above a pre-industrial average baseline, and whatever you do, don't exceed 2. Well, we've exceeded 1.5 recently. I think it was even in 2023. Then it dropped below it, but not a whole lot below. And now they're saying that this current year, 2026, going into maybe 2027, again, should be the hottest year ever recorded. That's what we discovered in 2016. Hottest year ever recorded is probably on deck. And they're thinking we'll get close to 2. So we'll definitely exceed 1.5, which was the Paris Climate Accord target not to exceed. And we may approach 2. And some people are saying now that because this whole thing could be uncharted, we could be off the chart, folks. There you go. Off the chart. That's what they're saying. We could be off the chart. Off the map. When you're off the map, where are you? You don't know where you are because you're off the map. That's how maps work, folks. When you're off the chart, you're off the map. You don't know where you are. So when you don't know where you are anymore, you can't say what's going to happen. And some people are saying we could exceed 2 or hit 2, which is, amazing. People didn't think we were going to hit 2.0 above a pre-industrial baseline due to global heating for a century. Here we go. Now it'll be temporary. It'll cool off again. The El Nino will swing back into a La Nina phase and things will cool down a little, but they may not cool down that much. And global heating is a thing. Global heating is a thing. Never stops. Every year it gets warmer. Well, that's why you're having this marine heat wave. Where do you think this heat came from? It came from global heating. And that doesn't stop. Why? Because you can't change what's happening in the atmosphere once it happens. Once the heat's in the ocean, you can't do anything about that. Once the heat is in the atmosphere, you can't do anything about that. And the greenhouse effect is collecting more heat than it used to collect. Why? Because we keep adding CO2 to the atmosphere. How do we do that? You ask. Well, we do that by burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. We burn 100 million barrels a day of crude oil alone. 100 million barrels daily. A barrel is 42 gallons. We burn 100 million barrels daily of crude oil. 100 million barrels a day of crude oil. You get it? And when we burn it, all that combustion product goes into the atmosphere. 100 million barrels a day. A day. And we've enhanced the naturally occurring greenhouse effect. Now, the heat is accumulating. 90% of it goes into the ocean. So, hey, look at this, a big fat marine heat wave. Surprise, surprise. Well, not surprising to me and people in my line of work. This is what you're going to get, and it's going to get worse. And now we're going to get a super duper flooper snooper El Nino on top of that because global heating is a thing. And where does this go? Let's talk briefly. Let's just talk briefly about what you should do. Okay? Now, again, your region, your mileage may vary. So you're going to have to figure out what is the big thing you're going to have to face in your region. Go do a query. What's the query? Let's go back to this. Let's go back. Let me find my tab. Was this it? Okay, this was the query. Okay, you need to run this and occasionally come back and run this again in your Google, in your Gemini. How does a strong El Nino affect weather in your name here, right? How does a strong El Nino affect weather in the ta-da? You need to do that for your ta-da, and do it often, and get a hang for what's going on here. Get a feel for what's going on here. What can you do? Well, you need to be aware of what happened in 2015, 2016. And that's another query you could do. What was the effect of the 2015, 2016 El Nino in my region? What is your region? Whatever. Southern Africa, plain states in the U.S., Alaska, Florida, Caribbean island, UK, France, Italy, Greece, wherever you were. All right. You can ask that question. Look back at 2015, 2016. If you can't remember, you probably can't. It was a long time ago. Just ask, what happened in my region, Greece, Turkey, during the 2015, 2016 Super El Nino? And you'll get an answer, because it's history now. So we can go back and we can look. That's the thing we need to do now. Sort of things that you're going to have to be watchful for. Mostly heat. If you find yourself stuck in the heat, and if that heat is going to last more than a couple of days, you're going to have to deal with the heat. People can cope with the heat. We sweat. A lot of animals don't. It's actually fairly unusual for an organism to be able to regulate its temperature by sweating. We do that. Your sweat doesn't work very well as a cooling mechanism when there's high humidity. And one of the things you get with a marine heat wave is a lot of evaporation from the oceans. So if you live coastal or you're traveling coastal, you're probably going to find yourself in very humid areas because of the marine heat wave. If that gets combined with heat, you're going to hit a thing called the wet bulb temperature. And hot days, if they're dry, are tolerable because you can cool yourself with sweat. But hot days combined with humidity may find you succumbing to heat exhaustion because you can't sweat. You can't cool yourself. You can still sweat, but you can't cool yourself using sweat because it's too humid. The sweat doesn't evaporate. It'll run off you. Your clothes will be saturated and the sweat will run off you, but it doesn't cool you because it can't evaporate. The cooling mechanism behind sweat is evaporation. That's it. And on humid days, you can't evaporate the sweat, so you can't cool. And people who are in that situation, high humidity, high heat, frequently succumb to heat exhaustion. And that can go to organ failure. And then then you're dead, basically. So you have to be situationally aware. What is your situation? And if you're near the sea and it's going to be hot and it's going to be humid and there's a marine heat wave and they're talking about the wet bulb temperature, then you need to be aware. And that means you have to get out of the heat. Even just a really hot day. If it's 125 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona, it's going to be dry in all likelihood. But it's still 125 degrees. That's hot, people. And if you have pre-existing conditions, obesity, diabetes, you're a kid, that's a pre-existing condition, you're a child, or you're just old, there's a pre-existing condition, you're old, and if you're in one of these communities, then you can suffer from heat. And a hot day, even if it's not humid, a hot day can bring you down. And if you're not able to protect yourself, or if there's no one there to provide protection, if you're a parent of a young child, a small child, then that's your job. It's to protect them from the heat and to look for the signs. And if you're a caregiver for an elder, that's your job, to keep an eye on your elder and to make sure that they're hydrated, that they're not overheating, that they don't have the appearance of a person who's overheating. And if you're not sure what those signs are, look them up. Talk to your pediatrician about your child. It's going to get hot. What should I look for to make sure my child is not becoming unhealthy due to the heat? And talk to a doctor or a nurse practitioner, or just go online. What are the signs of overheating for me or my elder or my students in my classroom or whatever else? And then if it does get hot and for whatever reason, wet bulb heat or just a dry heat, severe temperature, increases, well, then you're going to want to get to some place that's cool. Yeah, and at the very least, you can have a fan, right? If you have a fan and it's not humid, okay, once again, a fan won't cool you if it's humid because you can't evaporate. Then if you have a fan, then maybe you have to be able to turn your fan on. Well, you have to have electricity. Another thing that happens during heat waves is sometimes the electricity fails. In fact, it's a fairly common occurrence, actually. If that happens in your region or in your community and that's the thing, that the power goes down, then you need to be aware of that. You need to tell yourself, okay, the power's going to fail. I've got my fan, but the power's going to fail. Well, la-di-da. What am I going to do about that when the power fails? And because this is going to be a long event, it's going to potentially at some point become a long, hot summer, and the summer could extend into what you would normally think of as the fall. So we could have a long, hot August, September, October, maybe November. Right, last year here in the U.S., we had the hottest Christmas on record. So who knows what's going to happen? You just have to be aware, situationally aware, that you could have some heat. And it could go on for weeks. And there could be power failures. And those could go on for days. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You have to do something. And if you've got your fans and you got your air conditioning, but the power fails, what are you going to do? Think about that. I know there's no place in your brain for that risk to land and percolate, but now I'm telling you, that's a risk. Find a little spot in your brain, find a little hole where you can drop in there. It's hot, I have no electricity. Just drop that in there. Just slot that in somewhere right here in my chimp brain, my primate brain. I have a little hole where I'm going to stuff in there a risk that I've never experienced before in my life. There's a risk coming. Screw it in tight. Screw it in tight. So it's there when you need it. Right? That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here. Situational awareness. You might want to, if your house doesn't have air conditioning, you might want to go down to the hardware store and buy a little window box air conditioner. Even if it doesn't cool the whole house, it doesn't have to. If it cools you, if you could sit in front of it in a chair, sit in front of your little window box air conditioner, it's just right there in your little window, and you're sitting right there, and you're sitting in a chair, and it's blowing on you, it's cooling you off. It works. If you have a senior in your house and you think they're going to get too hot, then you set up your window box air conditioner, follow the instructions, turn it on, move your senior to sit in their chair, doing the crossword puzzle, whatever they do, and they're under the cooling air, and then they're fine. But you have to plan all that ahead of time. And you certainly don't want to go down to the big box shop to buy yourself an inexpensive window box air conditioner to install, or have someone install it for you, or call a handyman, or install it yourself, or get your uncle to come, or get your brother to come, or get your son to come, or whatever, someone who can install something for you. You don't want to be doing that in the middle of a heat wave. Because when you go down to the big box shop to buy yourself a cheap little small window air conditioner, they won't have them. They'll be gone. So do that now. If you think that this super El Nino with a marine heat wave that's coming towards the middle of summer, it's going to land, it's going to bake you in your house or in your apartment or whatever, and you think that's going to be bad, hard for you, well then figure that out now. Deal with that now, while the dealing is still possible. Because later you won't be able to. And you won't be able to because it's too hot, right? It's just too hot. You won't be able to stand out there in your side yard installing this air conditioner. You'll be sweating bullets, and it's hot, and the screwdriver keeps slipping. I mean, these things usually just drop into the window and close the window on it, and you're generally fine. But still, you have to do all that. And if it's too hot and there's no electricity and you're frustrated and you're frightened or whatever, you may not do it correctly. You may get it in backwards. The cooling goes outside and the hot comes inside. Who knows what you're going to do wrong, right? You're frustrated, you're frightened, you're scared, you're angry, global heating. Whose fault is this? I got to blame somebody. You're trying to install this air conditioner and you get it in backwards and the cold air is going outside and the hot air is coming inside. Now you're frustrated and you should have done all this 2 months ago. Right? 2 months ago. In fact, you should have done it on April 24th. That's today. In addition to heat, you're going to have rain. Depending on where you are, you might get torrential rain. How do you get torrential rain? Well, there's two things that happen. One, the oceans are hot, so they're evaporating more moisture into the air. That's rain. That's where your rain comes from. It comes from the ocean. Unless you happen to live near a big lake. Most people don't, but a lot of people do live near the ocean. So you're going to get more evaporation from the ocean. That's going to come ashore as moisture, and it's going to fall as rain somewhere. And when it falls as rain, you're going to get a lot. Because there's a marine heat wave. And the marine heat wave leads to a lot of evaporation. That rain has to go, that evaporation, that moisture has to go somewhere. It may come for you. So there you are, dealing with torrential rain. Now, what does that do to you? Well, if you're on the flats, you might have local nuisance flooding. The roads may flood, and you may, and if you didn't have extra infant formula or extra cat food or extra potable water, then you may find yourself in the middle of a flood having to go out and get something. And now you're in your car, and now you're in a flood. And what part of your primate brain, what part of your chimp brain has a slot in it for dealing with floods? Well, you didn't, because you've never been in a flood, at least not since 2015 or 2016. It's been a long time, right? And maybe you were 8 years old. Now you're 18. And now you're the one who's having to drive to the store. And you've never been in a flood before. So you don't know how to deal with that. You don't have any part of your brain that can cope with this because you've never been in this before. Okay, well, fine. Do it now. Deal with it now. Go back and look at 2015, 2016. Did your area flood? Okay, that's something to know. What part of your area flooded? Okay, that's something to know. Did your area flood in 2015, 2016? During the Super El Nino event? Because there's one coming this summer. So did your area flood last time when a Super El Nino showed up? Well, then make note of that. Pay attention to that. because that's going to happen to you. And you're thinking it's not, and your neighbor thinks it's not, and your cousin live in Florida thinks it's not, and no one is thinking about this because there's no part of our brain where we think about these things until it happens. Is your property near a hillside, and the rain hits the hillside and it's coming down in gutters, and it's bringing down all this debris? And were there landslides in your region before? Did you have landslides the last time there was a super El Nino? Well, if you don't know, go back and look. Go back and do a query, right? The last time there was a super El Nino in my region, here's my region, Southern California, whatever, Riverside, wherever you are, Northern Florida, Florida Panhandle, wherever you are. What happened in my area? I can't remember. It was 10 years ago. Or I was 10 years old, and now I'm 18. Now I have to figure this shit out for myself. I'm now an adult. Now I have to be responsible, right? Who knew? So here you are, having to figure out the next super El Nino. Type. Do some research for your region, for your state, for your province, for your city, for your community, for your country. Figure it out. What happened to the hurricane season the last time there was a super El Nino? What happened to this typhoon season? What happened to the cyclone season? If you're in Australia, which is part of the maritime continent, it's going to get dry and hot. Go back and look at 2015, 2016. Review, what was it? The Black Summer? Was it called the Black Summer? If you live in Australia, you know what I'm talking about, right? If you have friends in Australia, they'll tell you what I'm talking about. Well, when was it that everything burned and 1 billion animals died? When was that? Look that up. Figure out. What are you going to do? Did you have to evacuate? Well, you're going to have to evacuate again because the same thing is coming. It's a super El Nino. And now we have a marine heat wave. It's going to be a super duper uncharted El Nino. So whatever happened the last time we had a super El Nino, that's going to happen again, except 2x, probably. I mean, I don't know that, but I don't know for a fact that it won't. And these are patterns. We're dealing with patterns, people. And you're going to have to think about this. You're going to have to deal with this because this is coming, okay? You've already got a marine heat wave. Look at the map. What do you call this? What do you want to call this? This is a marine heat wave. This is real. This is not going away. Not going away ever. We'll be looking at this map, or worse, probably worse, 100 years from now. People will be looking at maps like this 100 years from now. Like this or worse. What else might happen during a super El Nino? In addition to heat and a high risk of wet bulb temperature heat conditions, which can be lethal, and torrential rainfall events, which can also be lethal, or at least cause a lot of property damage, you can have drought. And, one part of your country or state might be getting torrential rains because of El Nino, and another part of your country or state could be getting high temperatures and drought conditions because of El Nino. So you're going to have to figure this out. And if your part of the country gets really hot and you're going to have to escape the heat, where are you going to escape to? You have to think about that. Do you have a cousin who lives 500 miles away, who from the past probably won't be suffering the same heat you're going to suffer? So maybe you get on the phone, talk to your cousin, make amends for all the evils and ills the two of you have experienced over the years. Patch up all the hard feelings, and then ask your cousin the question. So, when this summer's heat wave comes, is there any way I could come to visit you during this period of time? Because it's going to be uninhabitable where I live. I live in an apartment. I don't have air conditioning. I remember the last time this happened. It was miserable. And they didn't have cooling centers, and the power failed, and so there wasn't any cooling center anyway, and everyone was suffering, and people died, and people couldn't find water, and people couldn't find food, and it was terrible. And I want out. I'm going to come hang out with you for a couple of weeks. Is that okay? I'll bring a tent. I'll bring a trailer. I'll bring my car. I'll sleep in the back seat. Now is the time. Now is the time to do that, because when the heat happens, it's not the time to do that. Because what's happening when the heat happens? Everybody has the same thought you're having. They're calling their cousin 500 miles away. They're getting in the car and they hit the freeways at the same time. And then what happens? Well, then you can't go anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. It's just a big parking lot, big traffic jam. And now you're in your car in the heat, running out of gas. And how is that going to work out? It's not. There you go. Oh, it's worth mentioning that right now there's a big kerfuffle in the Persian Gulf, right? And what does that mean? Well, that means they blocked 20% of the crude oil. And now there's diesel shortages in Australia and Singapore and Malaysia and every place else. And the UK and France. And even here in the US, the price of diesel has gone through the roof. We were seeing prices like $7.50 a gallon. So that's a thing. And what if you can't afford fuel? And the worst has happened, and now you have to get away, and you can't because you couldn't afford fuel, and your tank is nearly empty. And if you go to the service station now to fill up, even though it's $8 a gallon, you really hate it, and you're hating people, and you're hating life, and you're hating yourself, and you go to fill up, but there isn't any, because there isn't any. And everyone took what little there was, and they took extra. They brought extra cans, and they filled those up too. And they took what little there was, and they took it, and now they have it, and you don't, and you're not going to get any. And when was the time to think about that? Well, not at the peak of the heat, right? You got to think about this. You got to make a little place in your brain where these thoughts are going to reside, okay? Where these thoughts are going to reside. And you have to come back here frequently to have those thoughts refreshed so that you're able to think about this. How do you come back here? You like the video, you subscribe to the video, you share the video with your friends that you think may be in a vulnerable position. You've got family back in India and you think they might be in trouble. Now's the time to let them know. I was just listening to this guy, and he was a savage, but he was saying some things that made a lot of sense. And I'm remembering what happened the last time we had a super El Nino, and how it was in the village, and how it was in the city, and how hard it was for you. And now I'm calling you, I'm sending you a letter, I'm sending you a text, and I'm saying, okay, get ready. That's your job. That's your job. That's your job. You have to do that because people won't know. And even if they hear about it in the news, they won't understand it because there's no place in the human primate brain for these risks to reside. And we understand lions and tigers and claws and teeth and scales and venom, and we understand all that. There's always a place in the brain for these kind of things. But there's nothing in there for a super uncharted El Nino. Is there? No, there's not. So you have to make that spot. Make that spot. But put in there super uncharted El Nino. Think about it. Now's the time to think about it. Not when it's happening, not after it happened. Right now. I did a video a while back. Maybe I'll link it in the description to this video about the death of Southern California. It was fictional. I did a quick query and pulled together some possible events in the case of a strong El Nino happening in 2026 and affecting Southern California. And I took the route that it's going to get hot. Now, generally an El Nino brings a lot of rain to Southern California and the U.S. Southwest. But I took the approach that maybe it brings a lot of heat. And I did a fictional workup on what would happen to Southern California in the case of a massive, prolonged heat wave, which, by the way, you can have. You can have torrential rain events, and then between rain events, still have a massive, prolonged heat wave. That would probably be the worst case scenario right there. But we can't rule that out. You can have both. Heat waves are heat waves, right? A marine heat wave is going to bring a heat wave. And maybe it's raining once in a while, and then it's hot once in a while, then it's raining again, then it's hot, and that could be your scenario. So I did this video, a scripted video, and I basically read a script that I wrote, and about the death of Southern California, the demise of Southern California. And I did that because I want people to think about this ahead of time. My video about the death of Southern California was a bit over the top, but that's the point. We're doing drama here, right? We're doing drama. We're deliberately doing drama. I'm deliberately doing drama based on science, based on data, based on what's happening. You see this marine heat wave happening right here in the oceans of the world? You see this marine heat wave? That's a thing, folks. And we can start talking about this. And maybe, we do it dramatically. Maybe we do it for impact. Maybe we do it for influence. But we have to have this conversation. So that was my conversation in a video, the death of Southern California. Got a lot of views, and also got an unusual, for me, my tiny little channel, got an unusual number of dislikes as opposed to likes. And I fully understand that. I run the risk on this platform of alienating people. I understand that. But to some extent, that's my job. Because your meteorologist is not going to alienate you. He works for a business. And the business has to generate revenue. And the revenue comes from viewers and people that are happy with the news. And they buy the products and they come back next week and they watch again. And if you alienate people with your weather reporting, then you're going to lose your customers, which are people who watch your program. So your meteorologist can't have the discussion I'm having with you right now. I understand that. I understand that completely. He's going to sandbag. She's going to sandbag. They're not going to bring up any of this stuff. And that's my job. Because I have no financial stake in any of this. So I can be a savage. That's why I'm here. So like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and I'll come back here periodically and be a savage all over again. And remind you that you're kind of in trouble. You may be in big trouble. And only you can know that. I can't really know that. I mean, I've tried to give examples of how people might get in trouble, but you're the one who knows if you're in trouble or not. And you got to roll with that. But it starts with a frank assessment of your situation. Right? We are frankly assessing our situation. And it starts with honesty. It just starts with just being honest. You know, I got no skin in this game. I'm not here to fearmonger. Hey, look, I write fiction. If I want to fearmonger and I want to get people riled up, I write a book. All right, and that's where I do my thing. And if people like that kind of content, they buy the book. And if they don't want to, hey, they're not exposed to it, right? They see the cover and they're like, whoa, I don't like the sound of this. And then they put that book back on the shelf and they move down the shelf to buy something about Pinocchio, right? So what can I say? When I want to write doomology, I do that. Link in the description. Yeah. If you want my assessment of one aspect of all this, link in the description. I am also writing a new novel called Ariadne. I talk about it on here once in a while. Yeah. Worse. Ariadne is a lot worse. Well, worse. It's in the same vein as my first novel. No, it's worse. Ariadne's worse. But it's also an interesting story, and I'm enjoying writing it. And coming along. It's slow. I have other things to do, including this. So I don't have a lot of time to work on it. But it's definitely making progress. And we'll be back here with another novel, another doom novel. And we'll see what you think of that. So I'm done for today. Go back and watch my other video, The Death of SoCal. That wasn't the actual title. Look at my catalog, my back catalog, and you'll pull it up real quick. It was just a few videos ago. Take a look at that. Watch that with the idea that it's an in-depth dive into what I just did here. This was just a discussion of on April 24th, 2026, of what's happening later in the year, probably starting in May or June. Now is the time to talk about it. Now is the time to think about it. Take it seriously, especially depending on where you live. If you know for a fact or have reason to suspect that you may be in harm's way, now is the time to have that frank assessment of your situation. Please do. And once again, like and subscribe. And if you think anything in here that you think is relevant to someone you know and or love, share. Send them a link. Give them a chance to watch this. If you can help them think about their situation, because you know they are in a situation, especially if there's a super uncharted El Nino coming, and you know what happened the last time that hit their area, and you're not there to help them. If they're an elder, a sibling, friend that has small children, someone with existing health conditions, obesity, diabetes, shut in, someone who maybe isn't real mobile, won't be able to escape if there's an emergency like flooding or a heat emergency, and so on and so forth. Also, if nothing else, just if you don't want to share the video, just stay in touch with that person. You don't have to tell them all the gory details. That's you and me. We're here with the gory details, the scary shit that's going to happen. And you can call them and just ask them, how you doing? No real reason for the call. Just asking. How's the temperature? How's the weather? Is your air conditioning working? No. No? Oh, no air conditioning working. Hey, well, I could come down there, tomorrow afternoon and we can look into that. Just casual, as you do, asking around. How you doing? Is the power on? Is the air conditioning working? Go check the air conditioning. Just turn it on while I'm on the phone. Just go turn it on. I want to make sure, 1, you know how to do it. 2, it's plugged in. 3, it runs. And 4, cold air comes out. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted. Just calling to make sure you can figure it out. And then when the heat comes, you call them again. Hey, remember that air conditioner we were talking about? Yeah, you remember that? Okay, why don't you go over there and turn that on? See how it's working. It's working? Good. Leave it on. Okay, turn it off at night. Turn it on in the morning. And then call them again in the morning. Remember that air conditioner? Well, it's going to be another hot day. Why don't you go turn it on? Okay, this is just between you and me. That's our job now. Here we are, becoming aware. And there's other people you got to be aware for, because they can't be aware because they're old, or they're young, or they're busy, or they're distracted, or they're in denial, or whatever. And you just casual call. Hey, just calling to see how you're doing today. It's going to be a hot one. Yep, that's where it's going to be a hot one. Just calling to see how you're doing, how you and your air conditioner are doing. Yep, just calling to see. Casual thing. Just asking. That's your job now. That's your job. That's my job. Well, I'm here to give you a job. I just gave you a job. That's your job. Do your job. And in the meanwhile, come back here once in a while and we're going to do this again because she's a coming, folks. The heat. The rigmarole. The weather disruption. The torrential rainfall no one expected. The hurricane. The cyclone. Whatever. The black summer. Whatever they're going to call it, right? Here it comes. I'll be back here. And in the meantime, and on that fateful day, my advice to you, as always, is don't die.